All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, going over the online PDF textbook, AppInventor2, Create Your Own Android Apps by Wolber, Abelson, Spertus, and Looney. We're up to Chapter 18 of 24, Programming Your App to Make Decisions, Conditional Blocks. One of the neat things about computers is they can make all sorts of decisions. And they can do a lot of things, and they can do a lot of things quickly. And they don't get bored like human beings do. So back in chapter 14, we talked about how an app's behavior is defined by a set of event handlers. Each event handler does something specific in response to an event. But you can specify that some functions are performed only under certain conditions. And they give examples here. But they're things, and we've thought about them, or we've talked about them before. You might only want let's say if somebody is playing an AppInventor game and they reach a higher level, you might want to make the enemy come after them faster or have more enemies come after, etc. So we've done a lot of work already with if-else blocks. You've seen how to create those. Remember, if you've got an if-then without an else, all right, you plug a Boolean expression into the if, and if the Boolean expression is true, Boolean means true, false, you do the then. If you have an else component, if the Boolean expression in the if is true, you do the then. If it is not true, you do the else. And you can have multiple lines in here. Here's some of the ones that we've looked at. Equal, greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, not, which is an inverter, and, which means this has to be true and this has to be true for the whole thing to be true, or meaning either one or both are true. Programming either or type of decisions, we've talked about this before. They say, imagine that you've got an app that when you're bored, you press a button on your phone and it calls a friend at random. Well, you've seen this. This would be only if you had 2 friends, but if you had 100 friends, you could program this in. Now, let's talk about something that you might use that really, you might use and might make some sense to use. Let's suppose, and Facebook kind of does something like this. So let's suppose that you've got 100 friends. Now, with 100 friends and 365 days in the year, the chances are that you could have more than one friend have a birthday on the same day. But what you might want to do is you might want to, this would take some work, because here we've got some different stuff in here with else this, else this. Remember, you can have as many else ifs as you want to have in here. But if you had 100 friends, you could check the date and say if the date was this, then you would call this friend. Else if the date was this, you would call this friend. And if you had 2 different friends with birthdays on the same day, you could call this friend, then immediately underneath it call the next friend. So really, when you think about it, when you are writing apps, you're very much you're limited to your imagination. And that's really about it. Remember, you can have an if within an if, for example. If you've got an if within an if, that's a nested if, when you place conditions within conditions. And there's always multiple ways to write this stuff too. All right. You can add as many else ifs as you like. You can nest them with, can nest conditionals. When you place tests within branches of another conditional test, that's when you say that they're nested. You can program complex conditions using ands and ors. You can go nuts with the ands. One and can lead to other ands, etc. So there's all sorts of things that you can do. If this is true, and this is true, and this is true, etc. So this, again, you are, for lack of better words, you are limited by your imagination, and that's about it. And they give some examples in here, okay? And there's absolutely nothing wrong with the examples. But this was a very short chapter. I've got a feeling that this Yeah, we're at 5 minutes. So this is one of the shortest lectures thus far. But as the author said, computers can make decisions. You can build in behaviors, and you can make them as simple or as complex as you want them to be. All right? In the next chapter, when I come back in chapter 19, we will talk about programming lists of data. So that is a little bit longer than this chapter was. Okay, so we'll be back with that chapter shortly.